Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm super pumped today. We have a really special guest. She is someone who was in my last ADHD Parenting Summit. Her name is Monica Perez Garcia, and Monica is a board certified functional registered dietitian nutritionist with over 15 years of experience. She helps children with ADHD improve symptoms through nutrition and functional lab testing to identify underlying causes. So,
Yeah,
I'm so excited to have you with us today, Monica.
sure. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yay, yay. So let's just hop right in.
Sure.
So, Monica, a lot of parents come to me and they often wonder if food is actually really affecting their child's behavior or if it's just one more thing, to add to the list and to worry about. What do you say to those families and how do you help families think about nutrition without guilt or pressure?
Sure. Yeah, it's a deep question. I'll try to keep it light, but yeah, absolutely. So nutrition and food is something we do typically 3 to 5, 6 times a day, especially for growing kids. And
Right.
children that are growing have higher needs and they're very active and a lot of stuff going on. And so what we feed them is very important and really affects pretty much everything going on. So
Right.
I would probably say it's crucial, to feed our kids for optimal health. That being said, in modern society, we're busy and not everybody has time to be cooking and prepping
Right.
and doing all the things in the kitchen that we
Right.
we would love to do, right? But busy
Hmm.
schedules prevent it from happening. So, there needs to be a balance, but it does absolutely matter what we feed our kids. And so just I think keeping it simple and trying to feed them as nutritious as possible, I think is really important. And I think there's been lately a big highlight on processed foods and ultra
Mm,
processed foods
yeah.
and junk foods and how 2/3 of a child's diet is now coming from ultra processed foods,
Wow.
which is, yeah, it's shocking. And I think I'm guilty, not, I don't know the percentage, but I think we're all guilty of it just because we don't have the time to do, what we would like to do in terms of preparing food. So we
Yeah.
reach for these convenient foods. But I think it's important to be aware of them so that we
Right.
can make the best choices possible given your circumstance. So, for some people, they may have to get something out of a vending machine and then just
Yeah.
becoming more aware of what are the better choices, and things like that. But it absolutely affects behavior, it affects
Hmm.
growth, it affects every aspect of their life. And so making sure that they're getting their needs met, especially at this critical time, is really key. And it does help in the long run, because if your child is getting the right nutrients, then they're behaving better in school and they're behaving
Mm.
better at home. And so just putting a little bit more effort into food can pay off big in terms of, how home life is and how school life is. And so I think it is really important to do. Sure.
Yeah, and Monica, would you care to share, no pressure, but I know that you have a child with ADHD, and can you just talk about like how you approached nutrition as it relates to managing your own child's ADHD symptoms?
Sure. So she was not a picky eater. So I work with lots of families now. So I get a full spectrum of all types of eaters. She
Right.
was not a picky eater and ate everything. She actually had a lovely diet and she was my first. So I try to be, really careful with not giving her sugar and colors
Hmm.
and all the things. And she still had ADHD. And I think sometimes it goes a little bit beyond just somebody eating a healthy diet.
Hmm.
And so there's other things that could be going on that could be driving symptoms. But luckily for her, it was not about her not eating the right foods. Um, there's also things to think about too. If the gut's not working, then even if you are eating the right foods, we may not actually be absorbing them. So that
Mm.
could be something else that's going on. There's a lot of different things that could be contributing, but definitely for us, the food aspect was a little bit easier. So I also have another child that is a picky eater, and so I deal with that, but she's not my ADHD child. But I think as a parent, just trying to balance, getting the kids to actually eat what we're doing is another challenge that we all have to face with. But
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you for
yeah,
sharing that. And I love how you shared the vending machine example, right? Like
yeah.
all of us, we're human. We're gonna have to go to the vending machine sometimes, right? But it
Yes.
really just all starts with awareness. And I love how you highlighted that.
Correct. Yeah. And
Yeah.
balance too, because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like when we're too hard on ourselves for allowing our kids to have candy or treats every now and then, I think it's okay to have
Mm-hmm.
it as part of a balanced diet. It's just being aware and trying to do the best that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Monica, there's so many myths out there, right? As it relates to like nutritional myths, as it relates to the ADHD world. Um, what can you say to parents about what they really need to know instead?
So I think one of the biggest myths that I see that can actually be quite damaging is the types of supplements
Mm,
and things like that that we see
yes.
online. And I actually did a search for ADHD supplements on Instagram, and the things that I saw were very concerning. Well, first, none of them were dietitians giving this sort of advice. So a
Right.
lot of these people are health coaches, and which essentially doesn't mean anything. And
Right.
they are recommending things like saffron and CBD and mushrooms and all
Mm,
sorts of things. And it's not to say that there's no value in those. It's it's misleading is what it is because
right.
those are not essential nutrients that our bodies need to thrive, right? And
Right.
so I think where we do need help is getting in the basics. And so we know for certain that as a society, as a population, we're not eating enough of all the nutrients that the body needs. So we
Mm-hmm.
know this, the government does surveys on what everybody eats. And so
Right.
they have intake and they can tell you how much vitamin C, how much potassium, and all these foods we're consuming. And they
Right.
publish these reports. And shockingly, 100% of the entire population does not meet potassium needs.
Wow.
So that's just one of them. But if we go across the whole span of them, we are not hitting our goals on pretty much all of them. And these are the things that the body needs just for basic functioning. And so what
Right.
ends up happening is so maybe we don't have a deficiency in the sense of, scurvy and all these things that they used to say many years ago, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not being optimal. And what ends up getting sacrificed is your body is going to use the few nutrients that it gets to keep the heart beating and the lungs and the basics, and the rest gets just ignored. And so we're talking about brain, cognition,
Mm,
behavior. All of those things are not getting enough nutrients because it's all going to just for survival.
wow.
So we're essentially a starved population, and what we need are the basics. And so I think that's where we should really start, and we need a foundation in order for the body to be working at its best. So one of the things I see most missing from diets
Mm-hmm.
is minerals.
Minerals,
So
yes.
yeah, the vitamins always get all the hype, but truly the minerals, which is what's coming from the earth, we are very low in those. We don't eat enough of them. Our soil does not have the same amount that it used to. So the quality of the
Hmm.
food is not that great, and we're eating less of it. So it's a very big imbalance, and it's causing a lot of nutrient deficiencies. So I think that working on the basics is really important. And food first, always,
Right,
but sometimes we need a little bit of help. So I feel like when we're adding on extra things, CBD, our children are not deficient in CBD. They're not
right,
deficient in any of these things. And
right,
so we need to start with the basics first. Once we get all the basics there, then maybe we can, say maybe this will help a little bit here and there, but really, really, we need to start with the foundations.
right. So, and I hear from so many parents like, what about this supplement and that supplement? It's like, no, when you start with the
Yeah.
basics and then, like you said, add in, you know. later
Yeah.
on, maybe.
Yeah, correct. And
Yeah.
you know, we think we're saying we're trying to stay away from pharmaceuticals, but a lot of these supplements are made by these pharmaceutical companies, and it's sort of changing one synthetic compound for another. So it's not necessarily better just because it's touted as natural.
Right.
Um, yeah, and you know, the foods, they don't come with just one nutrient. It comes with a lot of nutrients. Some we may not even have discovered yet. So food
Hmm.
really holds more value in terms of nutrients. So always food first, but we may need a little extra help, but that comes after you do lab testing to see what we
Mm,
need.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good segue into my next question, Monica. So, you work with so many hundreds and hundreds of, families of kids with ADHD. And I know that you had shared, like, luckily your child with ADHD is not a picky eater. But we're for the families of kids who have, they have sensory sensitive needs, they're picky eaters, they might be highly resistant to change. Like, how do you approach that? Like, where would you start with a family with those types of
Sure.
needs?
Yeah, I think picky eating, I would say more than half of the kids that I work with,
Mm-hmm.
that's the number one thing is picky eating and just
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the kids to eat more nutritious foods.
Right.
So, you know, there's a lot. It could be happening due to various reasons, but
Mm-hmm.
something I do see very common is a zinc deficiency, which is
Mm-hmm.
very, very common with kids, can actually cause picky eating because we need zinc for taste buds to form. And so if they're low in zinc, then the taste buds, they don't work the way that they should. So then the food tastes bland and doesn't have a lot of flavor. So the child would rather have a bag of potato chips instead of, you know, broccoli, which, you
Right.
know, for somebody that doesn't have taste buds working, doesn't taste great. And so then you're having this battle with your child at each mealtime, and it's exhausting. So usually I like to start with helping figure out what could be missing for the child that's
Right.
causing them to resist these foods. And so, you know, looking for a nutrient deficiency like zinc is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes easier than having to fight with your child at every meal. So
Right.
usually there's something going on that's causing the child to be picky.
Gotcha.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, feeding therapy, I think it's also important to understand that with ADHD is, you know, we manage it from different angles. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
not just nutrition. It's not, you know, sometimes we need speech therapy or feeding, you know,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
we need all kinds of help to sort of get everything going. But the picky eating I do see with zinc sometimes is something. So if we start there, we can sometimes expand a diet without having to fight with our kids.
Oh, that's great. And what
Yeah.
types of foods are rich in zinc?
So meats are pretty high in zinc. So beef
Okay.
being one of them, oysters.
Oysters.
So
Hmm.
yeah, which is why you wonder, well, this is probably why kids are low in zinc to begin with.
Right.
Kids don't normally like to eat these sorts of foods, and they do find that children that are low in zinc tend to not crave foods that have zinc, and so you
Right.
fall into a cycle. But you know, it's important to know if that's an issue because zinc is also needed for the gut health. So when we have somebody that has low zinc, not only are they
Hmm.
not tasting the food, but now their gut is malfunctioning. And so it sort of, you know, starts tumbling down into other
Yeah.
parts of the body. But yeah, looking for nutrient deficiencies to make sure that that's not what we're dealing with is a good place to start.
Okay, great. And, a lot of parents I talk to are so overwhelmed and they're like, I'm the worst parent ever, and my kid eats junk and he's never gonna get better. Is there like maybe one small step you would have them start with? Just a little tiny shift that is just not going to add a whole lot of extra stress onto the family.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, something I see frequently is children not getting enough protein. And
Protein,
so we
yeah.
see a lot, especially the picky kids like to eat a lot of grains and breads and cereal and
Right.
So I do find that some kids are not getting their protein needs met, and this has a big impact on the brain. And not only do we need protein for growth, but we need protein to help with blood sugar. And we do know
Right.
that kids with ADHD have more issues regulating their blood sugar, which can make them have these, mood swings and
Right.
when they get hangry, for example. Lots of kids
Right.
get hangry. That's a blood sugar issue. And so the
Right.
protein helps with that. So I find that being mindful of including protein at every meal is a good, easy step. It
Gotcha.
could be from eggs, it could be from Greek yogurt or chicken, or there's lots of different ways to do it. And if you need a boost in the beginning to get them there, that's okay too. So, sometimes a protein shake,
Mm-hmm.
trying to, buy the best that you can purchase, but, you know, including protein at every meal, I think is important. And I also want to share, so, dinner time is meant to be, time spent with the family, not so much time in the kitchen cooking. And
Right.
I do typically recommend that my families keep dinner simple
Mm.
and just, think of the three things that we need on the plate, which is some sort of protein, some sort of vegetable, and some sort of starch.
Mm-hmm.
And then just making a sheet tray dinner with these things and putting them on the table and letting our
Mm.
children see it and select what they want to eat from there, I feel is sort of an easy dinner hack. Instead of, trying to come up with different recipes, the recipe is just protein, veggie, and a starch. And kids like things
Mm.
simple. So I find the younger the
Yeah.
kids are, the simpler they like it. So just a little bit of olive oil and salt is sometimes enough to flavor them. And then just
Yes.
having the kids see these things. If we eat them, they should eventually become more interested. And so just exposing them to these foods and having them see them at home is a good first step. Even if they don't
Yeah.
try it the first time, it's still important to keep
Yeah.
showing it to them.
Exposing and
Yeah, exposing them. Exactly. It takes many exposures before they'll even want to try things, and that's okay. So just
mm-hmm.
having it there, teaching them what they are, and then eventually they will join in.
Yeah, I love that. Just what did you call it? A sheet tray dinner?
Sheet tray dinner, yes,
Yes,
that
I love
that's my
that.
go-to. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to think of anything when I do my grocery shopping for the week. I just think of, every night, different type of protein and
Mm-hmm.
just keeping it simple. I find, the younger they are, they usually like to see what it is. They don't like things mixed together. And
Right.
they just like just simple things. And I think the role of the parent is to provide the proper foods for them and then
Mm-hmm.
let their bodies determine what they need to eat, because we are born knowing what our bodies need. And so if we allow our children to decide for themselves, maybe one day they need more protein or maybe one day they need more starch. So letting their natural instincts kick in, I think, is also a good way to teach them how to eat healthy.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
so good. So, Monica, I know I could talk to you all day. I always learn so much from you. Is there any last little nugget you'd like to leave with listeners today as it relates to ADHD and nutrition?
Sure. Yeah. So I think what we can say is, going back to the basics, instead of looking for, the gimmicky new supplement or the new kid on the block,
Yeah,
um, there's nothing out there that exists that's going to be a quick fix. It's
right.
just not there, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that coming back to basics and just feeding our children simple, nutrient-dense foods, if they're coming from the earth and they don't have an
Mm-hmm.
ingredient list, it's more what nature intended. And we don't have to overthink it. We don't have to read the labels, but just some chopped up potatoes and
Mm-hmm.
some broccoli and some chicken, and keeping it simple and trying to spend the time instead connecting with meals with our children, and getting them involved too, I think is a great first step, so that they learn too how to prepare things and where things come from. But I think it's also okay to allow our kids to enjoy all sorts of foods. And if they
Mm-hmm.
go to a birthday party, it's okay for them to have a slice of cake, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to let them enjoy. And I think being a little bit less strict about food, but
Hmm.
also bringing back, the less processed whole foods, and just
Right.
trying to keep it simple so you can spend the rest of the time, with your kids and enjoying being around them.
Yes, yes, I love that. Keep it simple. And that's what
It's
all
simple.
parents love, right? Simplified.
Yes,
So
exactly,
that's
exactly.
great.
The
That's great.
simpler, the better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, Monica. Well, can you just tell our listeners where can they find you?
Sure. So I am on Instagram
Mm-hmm.
and the my Instagram handle is ADHD.nutrition dot the number four dot kids. I
Mm-hmm.
also have a Facebook group that they can join. It's a private group, but I give as
Mm-hmm.
much I give lives and I give free talks in there as well and different guides. And then I have my website that they can go to as well to learn a little bit more. But yeah, I think Instagram is probably my biggest one right now, where I try to share as much information as I can.
Okay, awesome. And I will drop all of Monica's links
Yes, thank you.
under this video. It's been so great chatting with you today, Monica. I always love collaborating and learning from you. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and
Yeah.
have a
Thanks,
great day.
Christina.
Thank you
Okay,
so
thanks, you
much.
too.